We want to thank you again for joining us here on the Trempealeau County Outdoors. I'm John Kelly, and I'm joined today, as always, with Megan Jensen, Trempealeau County Conservation Warden. And you can see behind us, it's winter. This is our winter episode. We're at beautiful Third Lake, just outside of Trempealeau, and we're going to talk to you today about ice safety, some ice fishing regulations, some hunting and trapping regulations, some snowmobile safety, and the general gist of things that we like to talk about here in Trempealeau County Outdoors to make sure you have a safe and fun time enjoying this area. And Megan, can we begin with talking with ice safety first? You can see that we're on the ice here, but what's a rule of thumb when going out on the ice?
Yeah, so first rule of thumb is to make sure that you're checking what the ice conditions are. Even in the heart of the winter, ice can still be unpredictable at some times and locations. One thing we like to stress is that no ice is ever safe ice.
Right.
And we'll talk about some of the things to look for throughout the show, but it's a good idea to check the ice conditions before walking out on the ice to make sure that they can support your weight, your equipment for the activities you'll be doing. And we'll show you some of those tools and talk about some of the things to look for, such as open water.
Right, exactly. And before you even leave the house to do some of your hiking or ice fishing or whatever, you should probably prepare yourself for the elements. What are some things you can do before you even leave to make sure you have a safe time in the outdoors?
Yeah, so one thing is to make sure you're dressing for the weather. We live in Wisconsin in the winter. It's always a good idea to dress in layers so that if you get warm, you can take a layer off. If you get cold, put a layer back on to protect yourself that way. There's also tools that you can use for going out on the ice, such as ice cleats or yak tracks that you can put right over your boots to help with traction so you don't fall. There's ice buds to check the depth of the ice, make sure it's at least thick enough to support the activities you'll be doing. And then there's also some ice picks in case you go in, some tools that you can use. And it's always a good idea to let people know where you're going,
right.
How long you anticipate being out, and to carry a cell phone with you too in case there is an emergency.
And most cell phones, even if you don't have a plan, they allow you to call emergency numbers. So even if you are one of those folks that like to be disconnected a little bit when you're out and about, to have that phone with you at least so you can make the emergency call if needed. And we'll take a look at some of the tools you were talking about for checking the ice. But as you can see in the background here, there's plenty of people out here enjoying ice fishing. Can we talk a little bit about ice fishing licensing and regulations and some of the differences between that and our spring and summer months fishing?
Yeah, so as far as licenses go, there's really not much of a difference for licensing. Anyone over the age of or 16 and older needs to have a fishing license to fish in the state. One thing that I try and remind folks of is that licenses expire at the end of March each year.
The end of March.
Yep. So sometimes I talk with people and they think that the license is good for one calendar year or from the 1 year from the date of purchase, but they do expire at the end of March. So April 1st through the end of March is when licenses are valid.
So if you bought that license March 1st, you're really only going to get about a month out of it.
Yep.
So like I said, buy that license right away, April 1st, and get your full 12 months out of your license.
Yep.
As always, I would assume you can go ahead and check the Wisconsin DNR website and the fishing guides that come out each year too with any changes.
Absolutely. And beginning about the middle of March is when you can buy the next year's license. So there is some overlap time there too where people can buy their next year's license in the middle of March. So there is that overlap too, which is nice.
That is handy. And as with the open water fishing programs that we do, we talk a lot about boat safety and things like that. And with the ice fishing, you have your ice augers and your ice shanties and sleds and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about what are the regulations for having a shanty, leaving it on the ice, and just maybe some precautions in using that as well?
Yeah, so ice shanties are very popular. We've got a couple out on the ice today. It's still pretty warm, there's not too many out quite yet. But anyone who wants to leave an ice shanty out overnight on the ice needs to make sure that they have their name and address written legibly and on the outside of that shanty, so that if I'm out on the ice, I know whose shanty that belongs to. If it's a shanty that someone's occupying and they're going to take it home with them every day, that doesn't need to be on there. But any unoccupied shanty or left overnight needs to have it.
Okay.
And then for folks who do fish in their shanties, just a reminder that while they're fishing in that shanty, it needs to remain unlocked.
Okay.
But when it's not being used, say being left overnight, it can be locked up for safety.
So remember, nice, large, legible print stating your name and phone number. You
Address.
Said, name
Yep.
and address. And what about using heaters and things like that inside your shanty? I know sometimes when it's really cold, that's handy to have. Are there any precautions to take for, say, carbon monoxide or even fire hazard, I suppose?
Yeah, so with heaters, there's a variety out on the market. The best thing that fishermen can do is to follow the manufacturer's labels on
Sure.
those. Each one's designed a little bit differently. Some aren't made for indoor use, some aren't made for an ice shanty. So it's really important to use those heaters as described by the manufacturer.
And I suppose when you start having equipment like the shanty, maybe a heater, ice augers, you might be using an ATV to help get your equipment either from your home to the ice or even maybe onto the ice. Can you tell me a little bit about the regulations, the licensing? If you're not on the trails, do you still need the license and the registration to drive your ATV on the ice? How does that all work?
Yep, absolutely. So, that's one thing I like to remind folks of is in the winter months when they're going out ice fishing, they may use an ATV or snowmobile to get to their ice fishing spot. All the ATV and snowmobile regulations still apply, so it's important to remember to make sure you have your ATV or snowmobile registered, validly registered, that anyone who is required to does have the proper safety certifications to operate that. And that you are following the ATV and snowmobile regulations. They do apply even on frozen waterways.
And we'll get into it in a minute when we go into some more about the snowmobile trail regulations. But I believe, if I'm remembering right from last year, that during the months that the snowmobile trails are open, the ATVs aren't allowed to use the trails, or is it varied per trail?
It depends based on the trail, so that
Okay.
would be a trail by trail basis.
Okay, and those trails are probably available on the DNR website or maybe some snowmobile club website,
Yep.
so there can be some numbers. So if you're not sure about the area, the trail that you're driving on, I suppose
Yep.
check before you drive.
Yep. It's important to check to make sure that the trail you'll be operating on is open to the vehicle type that you will be operating with. So it does change throughout the state.
Good to know. And why don't we take a minute and look at some of the tools that you need to have with you if you're going to be out on the ice, and maybe we'll even do a little bit of checking here and see how many inches we're dealing with for the ice depth.
Sounds good.
Well, Megan, we're actually out on the ice here, just
Yep.
a little bit, not too far. But you're going to demonstrate a couple of the tools that you have with us today. One being your, what is this device here?
So this is an ice bud. It's great for checking ice depths. And then also if you need to just chop out a small hole too, you can use that with it, as long as the ice isn't too thick. Otherwise,
Sure.
It's a pretty good workout.
Maybe chop it for a long time. And, this is something I'm sure you can buy from an outdoor store, but if you are a little bit crafty and have the resources, you could probably make something like this yourself.
Yep.
If you want to use, I would assume that one of the main things you want to make sure is that it's sturdy and has a little bit of weight to it to
Yep.
kind of help you with
Yeah,
chopping.
absolutely. I know the viewers at home can't see this, but there's a little bit of weight to this, and it helps with getting some of that momentum to check the ice depth.
Should we see how deep we are right here?
Sure.
With our ice depth here?
Oh.
There we go.
So just a couple inches in this spot. You can see that didn't take me too many pounds to get down into water, and we got water coming up, and feeling there we've probably got only about 2 inches of ice in that location. So I tested the ice before we went on air in the area, and as we got closer to the dock, the ice got thinner. Where we are and behind us, the ice was thicker.
Which goes to show, like you were saying, the various depths within the same body of water. No ice is ever completely safe.
Yep.
A couple indicators while we're looking right here where you just chop through is you can see as soon as you did that there's a bit of a spread of the water coming up.
Yep.
So I suppose if you're hiking and you can kind of see that in the snow, that might be a helpful indicator for maybe where there's some current or maybe where there's some weaker spots.
Yep, absolutely. So some things to look for. Out here on Third Lake, there are some springs. You can see over along the shoreline over there. It's a little hard to see on camera, but there is some open water, thinner ice over there. So that's an indicator that might not want to venture too close over there. And then you can see too where the fishermen are over there. There's open water, and then there's black spots or blacker colored ice. That's where some of the snow has been absorbed by the water from that thin ice. So some things to look out for, like you mentioned, where we just tested the ice, the water came up. That's another indicator too.
And I suppose it might be a decent practice if you're going out on a body of water that you're not familiar with. Do some scouting from the land.
Yep, absolutely. Another great thing you can do too is if you're unfamiliar with the body of water or new to an area is talk with the local bait shops, maybe some of the local fishing clubs or sportsmen's clubs too, or other fishermen in the area. They usually have a pretty good idea of what the ice conditions are, historically how the ice has been. Historically here on Third Lake, there has been some open water due to the springs. But those are all really good resources too for people to utilize if they're unsure about ice conditions or a specific body of water.
And they're the people using it on a frequent basis.
Yep.
They know the history as well, so why not talk to those closest to it? And the other piece of equipment we want to highlight a little bit is the one we hope you don't have to use, and that's the ice picks you have here around.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about those?
So I have some ice picks around my neck. You guys could probably see them kind of flopping around while I was checking the ice, but these are really handy. Should you go through the ice, they have ends on them, and when you press into the ice, they retract and a pick comes out, and that can help you get some traction on the ice to pull yourself out. These are most beneficial when you actually are wearing them. They're not down in the inside pocket where they're hard to reach. But these are a good lightweight tool that you can take with you, especially in this early ice where the ice conditions are maybe a little bit more unpredictable, or even in the late season.
Sure.
But a great tool to have. Can wear them on the inside of your jacket and have the picks just coming out through the sleeves.
It's like our mittens when we were kids.
Yep, absolutely. The other tool too that I don't have with me today, but is a good idea, especially in this early season, late season, is to have a life jacket or a float coat with you.
Sure.
Keeps you warm. Should you go through, it's also a flotation aid.
Got to have that too, just in case. Worst case scenario is always nice to be prepared for.
Right. Yep.
Right. And with the ice picks there, those are something else you could probably make on your own if needed be, or like I said, you have something to help them float, or like I said, wear them. Don't have them in your pockets.
Yep.
If you're with. And as always, like I said, if you have questions, just go ahead and check out the Wisconsin DNR website, and they can lead you in the right direction there as well.
Yep.
Well, if you just happened to catch us, you're watching the Trempealeau County Outdoors, and we just went over some ice fishing rules and regulations, some ice safety itself, and now we're going to talk about trapping and some other hunting that's happens during the winter months aside from deer hunting, so some small game hunting and things like that. But let's begin with talking about some trapping. So it's not as popular as maybe as some of the other outdoor activities around here, but it's still very interesting and very good to do around here because we have lots of wildlife. Tell me about trapping.
Yeah, so we just got done talking about ice fishing, which is probably the most popular wintertime outdoor sport in the southern part of the county, but trapping is a great wintertime activity too, something that the DNR also regulates, but trapping is a great way to get outside, exercise, get into some new scenery, and just have some fun. And there's even some money to be made in it too, by selling fur. But so I thought it'd be a really good idea just to talk with some of the viewers at home about trapping. Trapping, there are quite a few regulations that are associated with trapping. So like with anything, I always encourage people to read the regulations before they go out and do the activity.
Is there a separate handbook for that, or would that be included with kind of your winter months DNR guide?
Oh, so there is a separate trapping booklet out there, regulation booklet out there. It's very good. Throughout the years, the trapping regulations have been developed for the best management practices to be in place, so that people can trap safely for both themselves and for the benefit of the trapped animal and for non-trappers out there.
So all kinds of great information out there for you. So you just have to take a look to find it. If it's trapping something you want to get into, or maybe it's something you are involved in and you want to expand it. Other things to do is small game hunting. So that would be your...
So right now, squirrels and rabbits are really popular, through the winter months. And we've got a few other seasons going on that will probably end by about right when this episode is coming out. But there are a lot of activities that folks can take part in throughout the winter. Ice fishing, one of them, but there are also some hunting and trapping opportunities too that folks can take part in. Biggest thing to remember is just to check those season dates, because we do have some ending at the end of December, early January time, some end of January, some end of February. So it's always a good idea to check those regulations for season dates and times, and also bag limits and other regulations associated with those activities.
I would think your local rod and gun club might also be a good resource for you for some of the activities, whether it's the hunting or the trapping, or even just some sport shooting and things that they might have going on.
Yep, absolutely. And another good thing too to check out in the winter, if you have youngsters who are looking to hunt in the future and they're ready for hunter safety, or with trapping, if that's something you're interested in doing, is looking to see if there's any trapper education or hunter education programs to get enrolled in too, so that you're ready for next year's seasons.
Sounds real good. Well, we don't have all kinds of snow just yet, but it probably will be coming. So maybe we can go and take a look at some of the snowmobile safety and regulations that go along with that. So when these trails do open up, we're ready for it.
Sounds good.
Well, now we've kind of moved out of the wooded area just a little bit, and we're going to talk about another activity people love to do here in Wisconsin. That's snowmobiling. We have lots and lots of wonderful snowmobile trails that are maintained by all kinds of different people, whether it's private landowners or it's maintained by state or even maybe county people that take care of it. But before you get out there and you start ripping up on your sled, let's talk a little bit about being registered and having your trail pass.
Yeah, so all snowmobiles in the state of Wisconsin need to be registered. There's different types of registration based on what the use of the snowmobile will be. In general, most people do have the public registration, which allows them to operate it on both private and public property. Public property such as trails, the ice, routes, etc. So really important to make sure that it is current. These snowmobile registrations do expire June 30th of the year displayed. So you can see on my snowmobile, I have a registration sticker that expires in 2019, meaning at the end of June, it will need to get a new sticker coming this summer. So, and it's really important too with these registrations that they're put in a spot that's visible to other operators and especially law enforcement. That way when I'm out working or other law enforcement, we can see that registration to make sure that it is a current valid registration on that sled. And
the trail pass that you display on the front of your sled, that's a little different. That's for operating on the trails. Can you tell me a little bit about those?
Yep. So in Wisconsin now, we do require a trail pass for folks that are operating on the public trail system. That is a annual trail pass, also expires at the end of June each year. So you want to make sure that that's valid and current for the year that you'll be operating. And that needs to go on the front of your sled, someplace visible. Most people, we tell them to put it on the windshield because that's the most visible spot on the snowmobile. Some snowmobiles don't have windshields, so we recommend that they just put it forward of the operator in a very visible location.
Okay. And there's more than just having the passes when you're using these public trails, and that has to do with hours of operation, nighttime riding, and even speed limits and obeying traditional traffic signage. Can you tell me about what do I need to know when I'm out there and I come across a stop sign and I'm crossing a road with my snowmobile?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like the rules of the road, there's rules of the snowmobile trail too. Those signs are put out there for your safety, for the safety of other operators out there, and also for the safety of folks who aren't on snowmobiles.
Sure.
So it's really important to follow those signs as they're posted. Stop signs, they're like a stop sign on the road. You're still required to stop at them. Same thing with speed limits. Depending on where you are and what the signs are, if you're on a snowmobile route, you are to follow the speed limit for vehicle traffic, unless there is a specific snowmobile speed limit sign, then you must follow that one. Because sometimes those do differ. One thing that's really important to stress is nighttime operation with speed limits. Whether you're on private property or public property, the maximum speed limit you can go is 55 miles per hour.
Got it.
And as one can imagine, that comes back to safety.
Right.
At night, you can begin to override your headlights at speeds less than 55 miles per hour. So whether you're on public land or private land, 55 miles per hour, hours of darkness is the maximum.
And just because it's the maximum doesn't mean that's the speed you need to be going all the time, especially with trails that you might not be familiar with. The trails change a little more frequently than when you're driving on your road. There's logs that could fall down, there's snow that could come. And as much as we see deer on a roadway, I would assume the deer also cross the snowmobile trails as well.
Yep, and there's always hazards, especially in Trempealeau County. We do have a lot of trails that go through the woods, so you want to make sure that you are operating at a safe speed so that you can go home at the end of your ride.
Exactly, and snowmobile operator licensing or permits. Is there an age that you need to be to operate a snowmobile, and is there a type of training or certificate that you should have?
Yeah, so in general, anyone born after January 1st, 1985 does have to complete the snowmobile safety class and carry their certificate, their safety certification with them while they're out riding snowmobiles. There are some exceptions for private land use, but in general, anyone born after that January 1st, 1985 does need to have that safety certification. And it's a good idea to take the class. We have great instructors in Trempealeau County and throughout the state of Wisconsin who are really dedicated to promoting safe snowmobiling, and it never hurts to have that education.
Right. If you pick up one tip, it could really change the outcome of a bad incident if you were to have one. And if you do have any questions, as always, contact the Wisconsin DNR website and go ahead and look for your local snowmobile clubs. They're going to be the ones that are helping maintain the trails that you're going to be riding on and can give you some insight on trail conditions and such things like that.
Yep.
Well, if you watch the Trempealeau County outdoors in the fall, we were talking about the deer feeding ban due to chronic wasting disease. We had our wildlife biologist for Trempealeau County along with us, Mark Rasmussen, and the ban continues. We're on a 2-year span essentially right now due to our proximity of Eau Claire County, I believe. Once again, Megan, can you tell us about the feeding bans that are happening now due to the chronic wasting disease near Trempealeau County? Yeah,
so as we've talked about in the last couple episodes, and with biologist Mark Rasmussen, is that Trempealeau County is now in a deer baiting and feeding ban, as you mentioned, due to the proximity of a wild CWD deer that was found in Eau Claire County. So what that means for folks in Trempealeau County is that they cannot bait deer when baiting for deer would normally be allowed, which is during the archery and gun deer seasons, which we are getting to the end of those seasons. But in the winter, many people do enjoy feeding wildlife, birds, squirrels, and historically deer as well. And so I just want to remind folks that this year and next year, they are not allowed to feed deer or have any food out there for birds or small mammals that deer could get access to. So it's really important to make sure that bird feeders are at an elevation that deer can't access them. And if for some reason a deer would get to it, just to put it a little bit higher.
Sure.
And again, that goes back to making sure that our deer herd remains healthy.
And I think a lot of people think of it as, oh, I'm helping them through the hard, harsh winter months by putting some food out there. But when we're trying to eliminate this disease, any type of grouping of the animals can actually probably be more harmful than helpful.
Yeah, so it's it's getting back to that. We don't want a chance of CWD to happen in Trempealeau County, which is why we do have that baiting and feeding ban. So there are food resources out in the wild, in nature, for deer that they can survive throughout the winter on. So which is good for them. But just want to remind folks not to place any feed out there this winter for deer. And then if they are feeding for birds or small mammals, just make sure that it's elevated in such a way that deer can't get to it.
And I would assume if you happen to see a deer that resembles one that might be infected with the disease and you get a picture of it, you can call the hotline number that we'll have at the bottom of the screen, or you can look and find the Trempealeau County wildlife biologist and contact them, and then they can move forward.
Yep, absolutely. If folks see a deer that looks like it's sick or injured, always give a call. Mark Rasmussen, our wildlife biologist, is a great person to call, or myself, or as you mentioned, the DNR hotline number. They can get in touch with the closest DNR resource to help move forward with that.
Absolutely. Megan, thanks so much for taking us out and about again here on the Trempealeau County Outdoors. You've been watching TCC TV.